Can you talk about music and how it affects us?
It's really helpful to first calibrate to a high frequency within yourself and feeling good. And then you notice when you listen to music how it makes you feel. Like, did that make you feel sad? Did that make you feel contracted? Did that make you feel just kind of weird and wonky? Did you notice that you started to have interesting thoughts the next couple of days? And most people don't look at that so one-to-one. It's kind of like a food and mood journal, but with music. But when you start to pay attention to that, you will realize the frequencies that feel good for you and the ones that don't, which also can change over time, you know. So I think when we're talking about music, there are songs and frequencies that are lower vibration and have dark stuff embedded in us, and there's programming in there for sure. I mean, mainstream music is a main way that we get programmed. But then in the realm of like higher frequency music, I would say, I mean, there's so much to work with there. And even within high frequency music, not all of it's going to resonate with you. That doesn't mean it's bad, right? That's why we all like different genres. And it's not like, oh, that one's bad and that one's good. It's not that black or white. It's just, is this resonating for me? Is this not? It's kind of like, oh, my favorite color is pink and I hate the color orange. That doesn't mean that orange is a bad color. All right. Let's talk about Q's and A's for 2025.
Some Q's and some A's.
Let's rapid fire this. We got a lot of good questions.
Yeah, a lot of really great ones. I love this first one. Can you talk about music and how it affects us? Different types, like mainstream music versus instrumental or classical style music. I read online that this rap song samples sounds of a murder cult in their song in the background. Kind of made me more curious about what is being put in music subliminally and people don't realize.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard. I feel like when people ask this, they want like a very specific answer, and I can't necessarily give you one because it's not like, oh, this entire genre is dark and this entire genre is light. It's not like that, but I think that's why it's so important to cultivate your own intuitive gifts and your own sense of feeling. And this is the thing, we all have this. We all have intuitive abilities, and that sense of feeling, I find specifically with music, is just always going to lead you in the right direction. And when we talk about, I forget how they worded it, but you know, are things good or bad or lighter? It's not that dualistic. It's not that simple. And I think it will come up in other questions people ask too. Even when we're talking about coffee, I'm like, I can give you like a general, this is how I feel for a lot of people, but it's all about how your energy body interacts with that specific thing at that specific time. So I think rap is a great example. I mean, I love rap music, and I think how much I love it has certainly changed a bit, like as I've gotten older. But I think a lot of that has to do with like with rap, like there are embedded in there in certain songs, you know, dark shit. And there's also other rap artists and songs that don't have that and are super high vibe. And there are also songs like there are a lot of mainstream songs where I'll be like, oh my god, this is so dark. But sometimes I'll be intuitively drawn to it because there's something else within the beat that like my frequency body needs.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that that's where just knowing things, I mean, okay, I'll say, I don't know that I really want to call out anybody specifically, but you know, there's like one mainstream artist that is like not of the light, and most of this person's music is just dark. And there's just one song I'm like, wow, this beat is so good, right? And I'm like, sometimes I will listen to it and I'll be like, I'll shudder and I'll be like, turn this off. And other times I'm like, oh, this is like a jam, and I basically will just be like, cancel out lyrics. And I just like cancel out lyrics because sometimes it's the lyrics that are dark, sometimes it's the frequencies embedded in the music, sometimes it's both, sometimes there's just energies behind it. And so it's a really complicated thing, right? Like making a piece of art like music, it's complex. There's a lot that goes into it. And I think a lot of things, like, it's not all bad, not all good. Like it's a certain vibration, and I think sometimes that vibration serves you and sometimes it doesn't. And then I think there are things that are generally just like super low vibe and helpful not to listen to. But I also think, you know, like I've certainly been out or I'm in an Uber or something and something plays and I'm like, ugh, and I will just be like, I'm just clear the energy around it. Like it is what it is. So yeah, I think different types of music are better for us and others are worse. I think a lot of people struggle with, well, I know a lot of people struggle with depression and anxiety poor body image, negative self-talk, like these really dark, depressive thoughts because of mainstream media. And so for a lot of people, it's from music and or what they're watching on television. I mean, you look at the things that are getting put out nowadays, movie culture is completely different than what it used to be. But with music, a lot of what's in mainstream now more than ever before is dark. It is. That doesn't mean everything is. And I also don't say that of like, oh, you're a bad person if you listen to mainstream music. I still listen to mainstream music, but I'm also aware of the frequency of things and how it makes me feel. And I'm also like conscious of lyrics. And yeah, I mean, I think it's a nuanced conversation, but I think there's certainly layers to it. And I mean, I think about, you know, I'd gone to a concert of a DJ who I feel like is pretty, like, I like love their stuff and it's pretty light. And at the concert, in the symbolism of the concert, that's where a lot of it comes up also. It's like what they were throwing up on the screen was super dark, like super dark. And so there's just like a lot of layers to this. And I think some of it, I think some artists know what's going on. I think most don't. I think that a lot don't. I think, you know, when you're like a main person in pop culture, you know what you're doing. But I think a lot of people who aren't that big don't necessarily know all the energetics of the frequencies they're playing and even the symbols. Like people, I mean, regular people all the time, they don't like know that symbol is dark. And so that's why you have to just notice when something feels off to you or feels weird and listen to that, you know. But I would say like it's really helpful to first calibrate to a high frequency within yourself and feeling good. And then you notice when you listen to music, how it makes you feel. Like, did that make you feel sad? Did that make you feel contracted? Did that make you feel just kind of weird and wonky? Did you notice that you started to have interesting thoughts the next couple of days? And most people don't look at that so one-to-one. It's kind of like a food and mood journal, but with music. But when you start to pay attention to that, you will realize the frequencies that feel good for you and the ones that don't, which also can change over time, you know. So I think when we're talking about music, there are songs and frequencies that are lower vibration and have dark stuff embedded in us, and there's programming in there for sure. I mean, mainstream music is a main way that we get programmed. But then in the realm of like higher frequency music, I would say, I mean, there's so much to work with there. And even within high frequency music, not all of it's going to resonate with you. That doesn't mean it's bad, right? That's why we all like different genres. And it's not like, oh, that one's bad and that one's good. It's not that black or white. It's just, is this resonating for me? Is this not? It's kind of like, oh, my favorite color is pink and I hate the color orange. That doesn't mean that orange is a bad color. It's just like, that's just what I like. And so I think that's also recognizing in the realm of music, because I'll hear people say things like, oh, that's dark. And I'm like, it's not, you just don't like it. You know, so, and that's fine. You can not like it. It can feel low frequency for you because it's just it's not resonant with you. That doesn't mean it's overall dark. But I also think, you know, I mean, music is an expression of frequency on so many different levels and so many different layers, whether it's if there are lyrics, the sound frequencies, the energetic transmission that comes into it, what's been created, like the entire process of creating it. There's so many different layers to that. And I think that, I mean, the way resonance works is if that vibration is existing with it in us and has enough of a pull, I'll say, it'll activate. And so I think about music that has really resonated with me and has helped heal me in a lot of ways, but also keeps me in that lower vibration. Like when I'm in sad girl era, you know, and I'm like, there are things that I'm like, wow, like these lyrics speak to me, or the sound of this is speaking to me, and it's speaking to my sadness, and it's speaking to my anger or my pain. And I think there can be a healing in that when it helps us tap into the feeling to help us release the emotion. But I know when I keep listening to that, I stay in that. I stay in a drama cycle. I'm sadder overall. Like I'm seeing the world through a different lens. And so I do think it affects people a lot more than they realize. I know for me, it's a main lever I pull, and the more psychic I become, I have to be really conscious of what I'm listening to because of what it's tapping into like within me, you know? So, yeah, I think that it's music is something that people are really attached to, and they don't always want to hear like the truth around it, I guess. But there are some things that are just straight up like very low vibrational and very low what I would human judgment say like bad programming. And there's also a lot of stuff that's like great for some people, doesn't really resonate with other people. That doesn't make it bad, but there are layers to it. And I think most things, it's not so black or white. I think there can be like high vibrations embedded in with lower vibrations, and some of that's intentional, not all of it is. So I would just say I think it's a helpful practice to like really pay attention to how you feel before and after, and start to put it together for yourself, what music resonates for you and what music doesn't.
I love all of that. I think that it is such a nuanced conversation, and people don't treat it like that. I mean, I myself have not treated it like that in moments, you know, like there was one DJ that I kind of always had this intuitive feeling just about him as a person, that he was dark. Like you and I are the same. Like when you see someone's eyes, you're just like, there's but I was at a concert of his, and like everything was fine. And then there was a certain song that the frequency completely shifted, and I was like, I need to protect myself right now. And after that experience, I went into the other side. I was just like, I can never listen to him again. Like, and not even judging people that listen to him, but almost kind of like that. And then I was looking at collabs that he did with other DJs, and I was like, oh my God, are they dark too? Like, do they know, you know? And it's like, it's not that deep. Like, because also, I don't know, maybe he doesn't know that those things are dark. Maybe he's just a vessel for that frequency. But like you said, like, it doesn't really matter. It just matters, like you said, that I don't feel like it's a resonant frequency for me. And if anyone's listening, like, oh fuck, there's this artist that I'm not going to be able to listen to anymore because they're dark, I promise you'll find, so like, that's the beauty of music to me too. Is like, you move away from things, and then there's this whole crazy abundant, like, there's always more music to discover. There's always more artists to discover, and it's a beautiful part of like self-expression in that way too. So just get excited about all of the other people that you'll discover by leaving other ones behind too, you know?
Yeah, for sure.
And like you said, it's not so dualistic. It's just tuning into what you need.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of music that for a long time it felt so dark to me, or it felt so, I was like, I hate that. It does not make me feel good. And I got older, and it's like my favorite music now. Yeah. It's like so interesting. And then vice versa. You know, a lot of music that made me feel so good, and now I'm like, yeah, I don't know what that was about. And so we just change, and our resonance changes. And also, I mean, I don't like the whole, like, I think people get really, it's like, is that person dark? Is that person light? And it's like, some of it, yeah. Like, some of it, I mean, I get, but I think when we're obsessed with that, I don't know, that's helpful. Yeah. I just don't know that it's helpful. I think it's more of like, hey, do I want to listen to this song or not? Does it make me feel good or not? Yeah. Like, and I don't know that we need to get into a whole story about people, especially, it's like, we don't even know these people. And I don't think it's helpful. It's like, hey, if you're noticing that every single song that someone releases, you're feeling a really heavy, dark energy around, then like, that's probably, you know, not the artist for you. But there might be some, like, I don't know, I just don't think it's so, like, everybody wants to categorize people. Everybody wants to make a judgment. Everybody wants to put a label on things, and we got to get out of that. So I would say practice that feeling piece, and honor that feeling piece might change, and notice how you feel after you listen to certain things. And if you're feeling more uplifted, more expanded, in a positive headspace, that's probably helpful for you. And if not, then probably not. And I know for me, like, I remember I went through this phase, it was like a year ago, where I was just, my brain was overloaded, and I didn't want to listen to any podcasts. I didn't want to be taking calls. And so I was like, I just want to listen to music. And I would just go back and play my old like banger playlists that I've been building up since I was like 17. And these are all like just some of my favorite like jams. And I felt good while I was doing it. I was like, I love my morning walk. I'm just listening to these old songs, just kind of vibing. And after a couple months, I realized, I'm like, I feel like I'm kind of just like depressed. Like, I just feel like depressed. I'm not depressed, but my mood is low, and I'm just kind of negative, and nothing had changed. And then I remember popped in. I was like, what am I listening to in the morning? And I was like, okay, I'm going to cut out like all music. And after like a week, it was like I detoxed, and I didn't want to admit how much those lyrics were subconsciously getting in my brain, but they were, because I was just going on a walk, not really thinking about it. And the more you listen to that, I mean, that's repetition. Your brain hears that, and it does wire your brain. So after I kind of detoxed from that, I felt a million times better. And I just think how many people are getting that kind of repetition work, whether it's in music or it's their TikTok or their Instagram or their favorite TV show. I mean, look, I think about things like Gossip Girl and One Tree Hill and my favorite shows, and I'm like, the truth of the matter is, whenever I binge binge watch one,
I get so depressed.
I get really depressed. I feel bad. Like my head isn't doing well, and I know it's the show.
I know
it's the energy of the show. And
I go
these
into
aren't
a
like
Gossip Girl
these aren't
bubble.
like dark shows. They're not like there are movies where I'm like, that shit's dark. Like they're trying to like implant shit into people. Those aren't like trying to implant shit into people, but the frequency of it, the drama, like the fear, the greed, it's like it's in there, and so you feel that, and you don't feel good, you know. So I think it's just a balance. Like we're doing the human thing, and for me, if I feel that around something, I'm not, depending on what it is, something like Gossip Girl. I mean, I'm rewatching it right now. I'm like, I just know that that's what it's gonna do. So for me, like, I'm rewatching it now. I'm not watching it every single day. I'm watching like 1 or 2 a week, and I'm making sure I'm balancing out everything else. And I didn't even consciously do this, but I noticed like I've just been listening to like only Soul Rising basically for the last like month, and I'm like, wow, I feel great. I think if I was watching Gossip Girl and then also listening to my mainstream music, I probably would feel like a piece of shit. And so I just kind of naturally balance it out. And so when I say things about energy, I'm just like saying the energy. And I'm not saying that means you have to do any single thing. Like there's all kinds of stuff. I mean, we've kind of talked about this, like with products. Like I'm like, yeah, this product is toxic, and sometimes I still use it, and that's just the reality of it. Like I'm, you know, like, yeah, it would be great if I was completely non-toxic, but I'm not completely non-toxic. Like, I mean, I'm sure this isn't non-toxic.
I mean,
you know?
is anyone? Is a single person on this planet? Probably not.
Some people are. You know, I think a lot of the health influencers, and I think there's a lot of like spirituality people, because it's like the frequency thing. But I think that's where, to be honest, there's a lot of people talking about frequency who understand frequency on an intellectual level. They don't see frequency the way I see frequency. Okay. And so it's like, it's all about how your energy body interacts with something. And so, you know, old me used to be like, everyone non-toxic, only all natural, blah, blah, blah. And the stronger my gifts got, and we were talking about this earlier, now I'm just like, it's an engineering project. Like what plugs into what and what turns on the light. And sometimes what turns on the light is like that medication. Sometimes it's like, go listen to Doja Cat. Like sometimes that is what turns on the light, because it's just a frequency mix. And so I think part of my maturity has been like, I'm not judging shit anymore. I'm just looking at the vibration. And I think there's a lot of people that talk about what's a higher frequency, and they actually like don't know how energy interacts because they don't have that that gift, right? But I mean, I know for me, there was a period where I was really struggling with my health, and I was like, I need processed foods. And I switched to all processed foods, and my body turned back on, because my body was digesting so much. It needed essentially pre-digested foods. And I was eating just squeaky clean, but it was so much for my body to digest in that moment. And it turned me back on. And then I recalibrated, and then my body was like, oh, we want whole foods again. And if I was somebody who was like only non-toxic, only on processed foods, like that's not what I needed in that moment, you know? And so I think that's where I differ a bit from people who do similar things. My cat's Luna's like, yeah, Luna's meowing outside the door. It's not so black or white, and a lot of this is very nuanced depending on what your energy body needs. I also hesitate saying that, because I think then that makes people will delude themselves into thinking that the things that they like are good for them. So I hesitate to say that. But that's just the truth of it. You know, I think there's a time and a place for everything. And in general, yeah, the more we're sticking to like natural from the earth, like that's going to always bring us in the right direction. And then there are also certain times when we need something else frequency wise to kind of snap us back into place. The same thing of like, you know, do I think people should be on medications like their whole lives for all these random things that could be healed naturally? No, like I'm not into that. But there are medications people need, and so we need those acutely, and that's helpful, and it's good we have that, you know? So it's the same thing like frequency wise for people. And there are just certain things, I think, especially as we have these like new bodies coming in, it's people's bodies just work differently. And so we gotta adjust. Just because something's natural doesn't mean it resonates with you. You know, that's the other thing.
Yeah.
So
definitely. Love that. It's nuanced. People are so uncomfortable with nuance, I feel like you said, like everyone wants to categorize, are they light or dark or whatever.
I think because it's like people want a cheat sheet, right? They're like, just give me the instructions. And I understand that. I think about like, you know, when I've struggled with my health, for example, in the past, and I would go to a doctor and just be like, just tell me what to do. And like, I think that's totally fair of me. I'm like, I'll pay you, give me the roadmap, I just want to do it. Like, you went to school for this, like, just tell me what to do. And so it's totally fair. But then there are just certain parts of being alive and being an adult and being responsible where you have to learn the nuance of your intuition. You have to learn, like, even if somebody gives you an instruction manual, if it's not working for your body, you have to be self-aware enough to say, okay, this isn't working. Like, no, that doesn't work for me, you know? And I just think it's kind of a maturity thing. And so we all are going to have to learn nuance if we want to actually be the masters, essentially, of our own health and of our own happiness, because people can give generalizations, but everyone is bio-individual. So I, of course, think it's helpful to give some of those generalizations because it gives people a jumping off point of like, look in this direction, but also understand that you might be like the outlier in the bell curve. And I know for me, that was like my thing my whole life. I feel like with everything, I'm the outlier in the bell curve. And so nothing ever worked for me. And I was always the mystery case. And then when I finally accepted, I'm just the outlier in the bell curve and like something different works for me than other people, then I could finally, you know, get somewhere. And I just learned just like trust my body and it works out, you know? So, I mean, I think about my grandma, right? And she smoked 2 packs a day every day from, you know, 15 years old until she was 80 years old. And that woman didn't die of lung cancer. Like, her lungs were fine. That makes no sense.
Yeah.
Right? But it's like random things like that. We're all different.
Yep. 100%.
Yeah.
Okay, I feel like this goes along with this, so I love that. After listening to your thoughts on coffee,
I know what you're gonna say.
It got me thinking, what are your thoughts on weed? I personally always find it kind of strips me from my ego immediately, and I'm personally able to access my intuition quicker. I'm also aware that it lowers your vibration as well. So is it kind of like coffee where I may find it helps immediately or now as I strengthen my channel, but down the line I may find issues, or kind of like an everything in moderation situation? Either way, I'd love to hear your thoughts. And so grateful and thankful for your work and amazing community you've cultivated. I love it here.
Oh,
and then someone else also asked, is weed as harmful as alcohol to our energy body, etc.?
I think it depends on the person. I think with a lot of these things, it's not always about the tool itself. And like, it's like the tool can be used well or not well. And then also the way the tool's gonna work is gonna just depend on the individual person, like if it's a vibrational match or not. And I think different people's energy bodies interact with it differently, like in general. And I feel like all my friends are like so on the opposite page of me, but like in general, just from what I see, I don't think it's good for people's energy bodies. Like, I just don't. I think it's like temporarily, yeah, but I think big picture, it dampens the vibration. But I think for some people, where it dampens them to feels good, if that makes sense. It feels better than where they're at, and so they like it. But I think if you weren't using it and you were like just doing basic energy work, like it would be such a higher frequency that I don't know that you would like that. But then I know people who it's like they do all of that work and then they use it because they want a damper. Like they want something to bring them down for a moment. You know, like alcohol isn't good for your energy body. Alcohol isn't good for your health. And you know, I didn't drink any alcohol for 7 years. Like, I quit. And then I was like, actually, I mean, sometimes I like it. Like, it's not good for me, but there are moments where I'm like, because of where it takes me vibrationally, I like that. Actually, because I'm so like high frequency in terms of like I'm in the ethers all the time and I'm so connected that sometimes it's nice to like shut it off. That doesn't mean it's like healthy, but it's just the thing for me. But I think that the more mastery you get over your energy body and your gifts, you can use some of those lower vibrational tools like in different ways, you know? Like one of my close friends, you know, uses weed all the time, and like he's one of the few people I'm like, oh, it's actually very good for you. Like the way he uses it is really artful. And I think there's also the whole piece of like how you're going about it, the ceremony around it, the quality of it. Like not all of it's the same. Like
Yeah.
I think the quality piece is very different, just like with food, right? The way you're going about it, the ritual, I think that all contributes to it. I think a lot of people are just using it to like numb out.
Yeah.
Or they're using it as a bypass to connect in with their intuition. And I mean, to me, it's like, I mean, there's a lot of plant medicines. I think we all know how I feel about plant medicines. I'm not saying they're bad, but I think that most people misuse them.
Yeah.
I think that there's a lot of people who don't want to do the real work to unlock that. And so they want to jump to the plant medicine. Even people who are practitioners of that. And people might not like me saying that, but that's how I feel about it. And I'm not saying this to everybody. Like, I'm not saying this to everybody. I know people who are practitioners of plant medicine, like they facilitate, and they've done all the work and they know how to really use that and support people on that. So I'm not saying everybody, but I think a lot of people have never actually explored what you can do without it. And I think that you earn the right to go there. You know, I think that if you're connected because you're using plant medicines, you're not connected.
Yeah.
Like, you realize that you can access all of that without anything. You don't need ayahuasca. You don't need anything. And I think if you haven't unlocked that yet, then, I mean, to me, it's like Ozempic. Yeah. It's like you could lose weight, you could do Ozempic. And it's like if somebody needs Ozempic, I'm not going to judge that overall. There are people that it's like a life-saving medication. And it's like, it's just a different way to go about it. But to me, it's like, are there longer term health benefits for most people to, like, we want muscle. We know that for longevity, like having that healthy habit of what you're eating. I mean, I know people who take Ozempic and they just, you know, have a Snickers bar a day. And like, it's like, okay, so it's helping you lose weight, but big picture, what is this doing to your health? And again, I'm not like, I know for many people, it actually is like a life-saving medication. I can't overgeneralize, but I'm just saying it's a similar thing for me. Like it's again, it's nuanced conversation with the plant medicine things. And so I just think everybody is different. I would say most people that I've, you know, in the last decade of working with people, it's always a let's get them off of it kind of thing. I think people can get addicted to it. They use it as a crutch. Anything we use as a crutch is problematic. I mean, like me being addicted to Primal Kitchen mayo. Like, is there anything wrong with Primal Kitchen mayo? No. But like literally I was like, it's been a month and I can't not eat it. Like I'm addicted to it. Like this is not good for me. Like what that's doing to my vibration, to be in an energy of dependence and need outside of myself, is not good. Yeah. Right. So it could be something simple like that. So I think sometimes it's about our relationship with it. But you know, the energy of it is it's really going to depend where someone's starting. You know, because you're going to interact with it differently. And again, the quality and the ritual of it, that changes the vibration of it, for sure. So I think like, okay, sometimes that's helpful. And even in that scenario, it's like, okay, maybe that's helpful to help you realize, oh, there's a feeling I can have where like my ego gets stripped away. And that's helpful to have. But then it's like, can I also explore other ways to have that feeling without that too? Right. So I think that's where it can be expansive to help people understand what it feels like, whether it's to be relaxed or to be more connected. But can you also get that from other things? Can you also realize, oh, this is a frequency that exists, a feeling I can have. How do I cultivate that within myself? Like, how do I downshift myself, or how do I open up myself? Can I connect with nature? You know, whatever it is, like those are frequencies you can tap into, with or without it. So, you know, I mean, am I a fan of weed? No, but like it's personal, you know, and I'm not going to say for everybody it's a bad thing or it's a good thing. I think everybody is different. So but I think people know within themselves if it's healthy for them or if it's not. Like whenever people are asking me that, I'm just like, I ask them questions. How are you feeling? Like, well, why are you bringing it up? And they will answer it for themselves. Like, you know, I'm just worried. I feel like I'm like overusing it, or I can only sleep if I have it, or it's the only time I feel connected. And I'm like, okay, so why are you interested in ending it? And they will answer it themselves. I'm like, well, then it feels like it's probably good for you to maybe try to get off of it or to try life without it, you know. And you could try life without it, and then if you're like, oh, that has value for me, you can still go back to it. So I think a lot of this is self-experimentation and noticing like just how you feel. Yeah, for sure.
That's what I was gonna say.
And that's the only way you're really going to know, because everybody is very different. Yeah.
That's what I was going to say, because like I personally came to weed, like, I mean, I feel like, quote, later in life. I don't know. I guess I was 22, but like I had never tried it at all until then. And then I didn't start consistently using weed until I moved to California, which I was like 25.
Yeah.
But I heard something way early on, which was like the medicine will let you know when it's done with you. And so I just always kind of saw it as like a journey thing. It wasn't like, oh, I'm gonna smoke weed forever, or it's like I just was always like, it's just gonna be what I need in the moment. And I feel like people usually want to define it like is it good or bad, or how much should I use it? And like that in and of itself, I think, is what kind of gets people into this sticky situation where it's like,
yeah,
if you were to just experiment with it, like you said, I think a lot of clarity would come.
Yeah.
I think for me too, it's like you said, like I knew that I felt good when I was doing it, but then I also knew like, okay, there's this frequency that I can access without it. And it does feel better to access it without it. Like straight up, like, I mean, I love weed just as much as the next person, but I love it more when I can walk into a room and I feel like I'm high and I know that I'm not.
Yeah.
You know? Personally. But that's because I allowed myself to be there. I wasn't judging myself for liking the feeling of being high. You know, it's like cool, like, you know. But then I also think, like you said, like the ritual aspect of it, that's something for myself. Like, again, I would say probably a deeper experience with the plant than most people do, just because I know that a lot of people use any substance on autopilot.
Yeah.
Whereas I have just learned to live life with intention, right? And when, like, I did have a moment with, like, the spirit of cannabis where she was like, you're fucking abusing me.
Yeah.
You know? And so then, ever since then, anytime that I'm going to partake, I treat it as I would treat a stronger plant medicine, like mushrooms or like ayahuasca, whatever. It's like the same reverence and sacredness that we approach that with, I think needs to be approached to cannabis as well. And I don't think that we talk about that in any circle enough.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, just in case this helps anyone listening, like every time that I'm ever going to partake in weed, it's like I inhale, I state an intention, I exhale, I state an intention. And doing that with anything in life is going to shift the way that you see it.
Yeah.
But even just shifting that, I think, could shift a lot for people, because then you have to tune into what you actually want with it. And even that alone can make you kind of discern whether you want it or not in that moment.
Yeah. I think most things are meant to be used more acutely.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's something like oregano oil, right? Is oregano oil bad? Like, it's really helpful if I like have candida or SIBO or whatever. But if you're using oregano oil every day, you're going to ruin your gut.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, I think a lot of things are kind of like that. And we need to know in cycles. I mean, cold plunging, right? Like right now I'm not cold plunging because my body was like, I needed a break, you know? I mean, we got to just know how to cycle things, you know? But I mean, weed has an interesting frequency. It's just a really interesting thing for me. Like, when I talk to its energy, when I read its energy, because there's those different lenses of it. There's like, you know, communicating with cannabis and that frequency. And then there's like watching what it does to people's fields. Like it's a very interesting experience. And I feel that it's different if you do it alone than if you do it with other people.
Oh yeah. 100%.
I think that changes a lot.
Yep.
Of things. But yeah, I just think that because it's so accessible, people don't really know how to use it properly. I mean, it's like coffee.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, and I feel like also because it's so like, quote, low risk, right? It's like, I mean, people love to be like, oh, like there's no studies that show that it's a damaging, whatever. It's like, because it's just so low risk, people want to think that they can do it all the time.
Yeah.
And that it's fine and it's okay.
Yeah.
And it just makes you feel so, like most people, I feel like it's either like it makes you feel amazing, or there's people that it makes them feel extremely paranoid, so they kind of never touch it. And so for the vast majority of the population that feels so good, it's like, oh, well, how could something that's so good that also doesn't affect my health negatively, like that's why there's such an attachment to it.
Well, I just disagree with that. Like, I know there's whatever science or whatever, but so from a young age, I was around in a number of contexts, like a lot of different substance abuse. And I was also extremely psychic and like didn't have extra information. And I would watch people. There were people around me who were alcoholics, and there were people around me who were addicted to weed. Like, and it was just, and it was like 2 different types of people.
Yeah.
Like, and there's other types of people too, right? But like other drugs and stuff. But I remember like those 2, and my spirit guides were always like, would always tell me like, if you got to do one, alcohol, like always do alcohol. And they were like, do not touch it. Do not touch the weed. Like, and I remember, cause I would see people's fields, and it was like what it was doing long-term to people's energy bodies was, it's extremely different than what alcohol does.
Mm-hmm.
And alcohol creates, and again, there's nuance to this, right? It's like, because if you do, it doesn't matter what it is for a long period of time, it's going to start to create long-term effects. But in general, alcohol's effects are a lot more acute, and weed's effects are a lot more long-lasting on someone's energy field. So like you can rebound from alcohol's effects a lot faster, and like, but people will keep drinking, so then it just happens again, and it's like a lot of little micro cuts. Versus what weed can do is, it's like a long-lasting thing, you know. So it created a very like just different experience. And even just like you know, they'd show me what was going on in people's brains, and it the way it down regulates it, I think, is a lot more harmful. And I have no science around it, and I know science like is the opposite, but I'm just telling you, like, as a psychic and like as somebody who looks at people like inside things, like a scan, that's just what I've always seen.
Yeah.
And so in high school, I was like, I drank a lot, and I drank an unhealthy amount, and that wasn't good for me. But I was like, I will not smoke. I would not touch it, because my spirit guides were like, do not.
Yeah.
And then I remember, I mean, I didn't try it until I was, probably 22 or 23. And every time I, like, whether I was like smoking it, if I was like vaping, if I took an edible, if I tried all these different forms, and I would do it different times. And I like, they're either, just what it would do to me, I was like, I cannot come back from this. Like, it's like literally not worth it. And or the couple of times that, it's probably like 3 times, it didn't have any negative effects. What happened was nothing was happening. And I would take more and more and more. And I remember one night, I ate like 3 bags of gummies, and then we tried it again, the same amount, with like actually smoking it, because we were like, I was with somebody, like, what the fuck, like, I was like, maybe it was just the edible thing. Like, literally that high amount, nothing happened to me.
Wow. Nothing
happened to me. And my energy body was just like, metabolize, get it out, like, don't touch it. And I do think it creates I know it creates fog in someone's channel.
Right.
It's like that's the longest lasting thing it does, and it takes a long time to clear that out. Like, it directly, your central column of where your channel is, that's like one of the biggest long lasting effects. And on your auric field, it creates a fog around it that takes a long time to clear out. Versus what alcohol is doing in the energy field is a lot more like, if it's an entity attachment or like a program, like, you can pluck it out. But with that foggy stuff, it's a lot harder to pull that out of the energy body. So that's how I feel about it. Yeah. You know? Yeah. But again, it depends on if you're using it masterfully, which most people aren't.
Right.
It doesn't create that effect. Yeah. Because you know what to do.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
Just like any other tool.
Yeah, just like everything.
Yeah.
Good word. Okay. Do we still have free will after we transition?
Oh, man.
We're getting all the controversial shit today.
Yes? Like, transition where? You know, like, okay, so when you're an energy orb, it's the experience of choice is different. Okay, it's just like what vibrates with me, right? So when we talk about like, hey, I chose my family, we think about it like the same way if I was scanning and I'm like, oh, I like you, or maybe like, and that's the best way to describe it. But really what's going on a soul frequency, it's like you're just an energy orb, and there are certain vibrations that need to be completed or matched or activated. And so then you just are like, what we say is choosing, that we think of like as a human choosing, is like, oh, so then I go find the match where that's going to be activated or healed or whatever. So it's not the same experience of choice that we think. Am I making sense?
Yeah.
And so it's easier to describe and explain what's going on from these kind of human lenses so that we can make sense of it. But when you're just pure frequency, it's not that same experience. It's just like this vibrates with me, or like this is what my soul needs to calibrate me or whatever. And so you just like go there because resonance pulls you there. It's not
like a magnet.
Yeah. You know, so it's not choice in the same way, but we describe it that way. But there's also, it's like, so I guess it's like after we transition by choice, it depends where you are in terms of dimensions. Like when you reincarnate, we're going to have free will in certain places, and your level of choice or like options, like, are there vibrational options? Yes, there are vibrational options, in dimensions that are closer to where we are. And the further up you go, so to speak, it's not really an option thing. It just is.
So like what happens right when you die?
So I mean, well, actually what happens right when you die is different for different people, actually. But you know, you'll basically be taken by like a main guide or a group of guides. Are going to take you into like a life review, and you're going to go back and watch and learn your lessons, essentially.
And that feels very human, I would imagine.
It feels more human, right? Like you're kind of in between, right? And then there are certain because there's like, I guess, a level of emotion attached. There's a level of understanding attached to it, but it's not as human because it's not like you're still not reacting the same way you would as in a human body. Like the second you're out of a human body, it's a different experience. Again, it's a level of understanding without all of this emotional attachment that we have. Otherwise, we wouldn't be able to really review it. You know, if you're judging yourself for everything you're reviewing, then you can't, as a soul, have a clear like, oh, that was bad, or like, oh, I should have learned that, or I need to karmically balance that out, you know? And so from there, then, you know, you will either reincarnate, or you'll kind of, and where you reincarnate will depend. And there can be, and sometimes it's like, depending on the karmic balance and the frequency, you have to go back like to Earth, or you have to go to another place, or you whatever. And other times there is a level of choice, I guess, about where you want to go next or what you want to do next. Again, next, like we're still operating within like some time there. So that's what's hard about explaining some of these concepts, because it's like we only have this paradigm to work with of how we understand things, and a lot of these things are outside of that paradigm, so it's almost like hard to articulate, which is why psychics, we will use language that makes sense within our paradigm, even though that's not technically what's going on, just so we can make best sense of it, if that makes sense. So then you're essentially going into your next orientation point, which sometimes it's just chosen for you. Other times there's different vibrational options. And so you get to, I guess, choose the one. But again, as the soul form you are, it doesn't necessarily always feel like I'm choosing it the way I'm like choosing what is my career today. You know what I'm saying? It's more of just like either or, I guess, could work. And so what do I want to master next? Or what? And sometimes it's like there's not a choice, because it's like this has to come first, which then adds on to this, which then adds on to this. Like I think about now different, you know, past lives I've had that all kind of add together, where I have specific skills from all of them. And like now in this timeline, this life is making sense because I needed to go through all those experiences to be prepared for this. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. But also, you know, there are things in this lifetime that are connected to futures that I haven't lived yet, where I'm learning things that I don't even realize are what's adding to my experience now, or building on that one. That's how they're all so intrinsically connected. And when you think about that, for example, just from the human point, there are things that we do that we don't consciously choose to do, that we just do. And then you look back and you're like, wow, I'm so glad I did that. Right? And you realize like that was a choice I made, but it didn't feel like a choice. It just felt like something I did. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the best way I could describe that experience of choice in a higher dimension.
I love that. Yeah. I think it's fascinating to think about. Just like you said, because we don't really have verbiage for it. Mm-hmm. but like
I
we've
mean,
also all experienced it.
We have experienced it. Most people don't know what it's like to really strip away our human emotions or our human judgment, our human ego, like really strip that away. Most people don't remember what it is just to be pure energy. So it's hard for them to even conceptualize what it would be like to move without like choice, in the sense of I'm judging something, because most people think of choice as this is better, this is worse, or what do I want to do, and there's some tinge of like judgment or emotion around it. When you peel back, when you remove all of those human aspects, it's a different experience. But most people, because they just can't even conceptualize that, it can be difficult to articulate.
Yeah, I mean, every time that I think about it, it just fills me with such gratitude.
Yeah.
Like, to do the human thing.
Mm-hmm. Love it.
Like, allow yourself the luxury to understand that you're here now, able to make choice, able to love the way that we love.
Yeah. Why do you think the gods incarnated and just drank wine and had parties all the time and had sex?
Yeah.
Like, they could have not.
Yeah.
And like, because the human thing, like the earthy thing, the senses, like it's cool.
Yeah.
It's good stuff.
Yep. All the juice is here. I love it.
These are juicy questions.
These are really good questions. Oh, I'm curious what you're going to say about this too. Hello, would love to hear your thoughts.
Hello. Hello, everyone out there.
Hello?
Hello? Hello, can you hear me?
Would love to hear your thoughts on sidereal versus tropical astrology. I've been seeing so much about each, and that tropical is wrong. There's a theme here about this right and wrong, right? Feels like it's different frequencies for sure. Would love to hear your take.
Yeah, I'm not an astrologer, so I can't speak from that lens. But my experience, like my personal experience, and then kind of just what I've evaluated from different people who have different relationships with it and talking to different astrologers, like, look, I think that there's a place for both and for everything. And I know for some people, one might resonate a lot more than the other. And so I think it's helpful information to just learn about and see what's resonating more. My friend Kelly Rowland, who I think a lot of people listening might know, she explained it to me, I felt like best. And I was like, yeah. And I forget exactly what she said, but essentially she said something to the effect of that she feels like, because she was like talking about her experience with it, and she's an astrologer. She was saying, when I first looked into my sidereal, I was like, wow, this really resonates. She's like, but at the same time, there are pieces of this tropical that really resonate for me as well. And she was like, I feel like it kind of depends on where you are in your, I don't know if evolution is the right word, but she was saying she feels like the version of us that is like the soul in a body having the human experience in the matrix world essentially is the tropical, and the version of us that's like there, like time doesn't exist, space doesn't exist, like I'm just a soul in the body somewhere here, like I'm outside of the matrix, is more the sidereal.
I just got chills.
Yeah. And she was like, and that's why people might kind of float in and out. She's like, people who are like really like no piece of them really plays the matrix game might resonate more with the sidereal, and other people who are doing more like earthy things and kind of plug into that might resonate more with their tropical. And she was saying that she's like, what, I feel like when I'm more in like kind of Capricorn energy and like I'm working, I'm doing earth stuff, I'm planning events, she's like, I feel like I'm much more in my tropical. She's like, when I'm like channeling and in the ethers, I'm feeling much more in my sidereal, and that makes a lot of sense to me. And so I think it's just kind of like what part of the game you're playing, and for me that resonated because I'm like, well, my tropical resonates like very exactly, and I think also because I'm very much I like the human experience,
Same.
So I feel like it doesn't have to be an either or. I think both give helpful information, because I mean the tropical is like based on, I guess, the falsities of time, right, versus like the sidereal is like what's actually going on. But it's like, but the falsities of time are what we're operating within here. Like if we use the calendar year that we have here, so it makes sense to me that like that part of us that's playing here could resonate with that, and the part of us that's not would resonate with this. And then depending on where you're at, like if you're just like, yeah, I don't want to play that at all, then maybe fully that is what's going to land for you. So I think both are helpful information. That's just my perspective. I know some people are very much one or the other, but what Kelly said really, really resonated for me.
Hot take.
Yeah.
Hi, Christina.
No, everyone wants me to be like, tropical's a piece of shit.
Yeah,
like,
I know.
Like, for me, to be honest, my tropical resonates more.
Gotcha. I think that's true for me too. I've only looked into it like once.
Yeah.
But I think in my sidereal, I was a Libra moon. So I was like, instantly no.
Absolutely not. Yeah.
Instantly no.
That was the thing for me. Yeah. I was like, my sidereal just didn't really resonate. Yeah. And I know a lot of people whose tropical doesn't resonate and their sidereal, they're like, wow, like this really deeply resonated with me. You can also look at this with human design, like too. And then I know people where it's both. If for me, like, yeah, I don't know, the sidereal just didn't really resonate with me. So yeah, I think it just kind of depends on, I guess, your resonance.
Yeah.
And that's fine.
Same message for all of these. Hi, Christina. I am brand new to you. I saw you were recording a podcast with Lazy Millionaire, so I decided to check out your show. I just finished listening to the episode 698. One question I have is, are there any coaches or programs you recommend for someone who does not have an online coaching or funnel type business, but rather another type of business? I am 27 and I am a solopreneur. The business I am trying to build right now is pretty niche and doesn't revolve around social media at all. I actually help people who have gone through foreclosure reclaim funds from the court system. I would really appreciate any advice or recommendations you might have. Thank you.
Yeah, it's a good question. I don't, unfortunately, have like a specific. Was she asking a course or
coach?
A coach. Yeah, I don't have
coaches or programs.
Okay, yeah, I don't know any like off the top of my head, unfortunately, but like how I would think about this, because I'm like probably not the best person to ask, right? Because it's not, my business is an online thing. But what I would say is, one, energetically, I think when you put out that intention, you start to kind of attract those people in. There are so many books written about business in general that are going to be really helpful for every business. You know, so most business information, I mean, you know this, most business information that has informed how I have built my business, I never learned about the online space. I just learned about business. And I think why I'm good at business is because I didn't just jump into online space stuff. I learned about business. Like I learned about all different types of business, and there are principles that will apply to everything. And actually, like me learning about brick and mortars has been super helpful for me actually starting to get innovative in the online space. And so I think that I would go back to like traditional, like more like traditional business books, for example, or like more traditional business content. There's lots of business podcasts where people talk about all different types of companies. I think, you know, there's podcasts like How I Built This, where you're hearing from founders who have built all different types of things. And so I think it's helpful just to kind of get in the energy of people who have built those different types of companies. And I do think it's helpful to learn about very different types of businesses, you know, that's helped me a ton. But go seek out people who have built, it doesn't have to be the exact same thing. Even if it's niche, there's going to be businesses that are like kind of similar-ish, like other niche businesses, where, you know, and start to kind of learn from those people. And that's going to start to plug you into kind of, I think, different groups and programs and stuff in that space. But, you know, if you break business apart, like if you learn about marketing is marketing. And then you just apply some critical thinking skills and like you can apply it to your industry. If you learn about, I mean, whatever the part of the business is, if it's like setting up the business, if it's like payments, I mean, there are just things that apply everywhere that if you learn those foundational pieces are going to lend themselves to your business, whatever it is. You just have to be critically thinking a bit. But I think that it's really helpful to find mentors of people who are just good at business. And this is where, you know, there are a lot of people who are like, they are business people. They've worked with lots of different types of businesses. And so they have that experience. And those are great mentors to find. I would say look for, there are lots of entrepreneurship groups. Like, I mean, there's like a bunch of entrepreneurship groups, like here in San Diego, that are like chapters of things that are all over the country. And those groups are all different types of businesses. They purposely put you with very different types of companies. Like some people are online, other people brick and mortar, other people are like, it's all very different. And so I would say join something like that. Try and find something like that in your area or online, because there are tons of masterminds, like where it's a lot of different types of businesses. I mean, I've been in some masterminds where it's just online, but I've been in more where there's all different types of companies and businesses going on, and that's really helpful to learn from those different people. So that's kind of where I would start. Kind of just basic business, and then you find people from there, and that's going to lead you to somebody that maybe is more closer to your niche.
Yeah, I love that. I feel like that's very also resonant with what you did, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like you really took advantage of like your resources,
Yeah.
and like people want to help you,
Mm-hmm.
and like asking for advice and asking people about their experience, and you
Yeah.
just really like got in there,
Yeah,
and learned a lot from other people.
I mean, none of my mentors were in the online course or whatever I was doing. None of them until like years later, it was the first person that was in the online space. Everybody else I was learning from, all my first mentors and coaches and masterminds, none of them had a business like mine. Like I was the only person in any of these groups that was doing online. And they all had different, very, very different types of companies, whether it was all referral based or it was like a brick and mortar, or it was just all very different. So yeah, I probably would be further ahead had I just jumped into online courses, but at the same time, maybe not, because I just think that if I just learned about the online space, I would be missing so much information about business in general. Like I'm pretty creative, like when it comes to business planning, because I understand what works in different industries. And I think it's good to be tapped into that a bit and always to be learning about that. That's why like my friends who have very different types of companies, I love to hear about what's going on, because it's just, I'm like, I don't know about this. I want to learn about it. And there will be ideas I get from them. I'm like, whoa, like I should apply this here. So I think if you own a business, you need to learn like just basic principles and understandings that are like critical thinking skills, so you can apply that to your business, because there's a reason why, again, people who are really good at business overall, like you could put them in any business and they could figure it out, right? So if you can learn some of those things from them, like any serial entrepreneur, you're gonna be in a good spot, versus people who are only teaching specific skills. Like they're only teaching how to build a funnel, or how to, like, that is a very specific thing that's super helpful. But I would say everybody should also be learning just these foundational things, like marketing 101, like understanding like customer psychology, like, I mean, how to set up a company, right? Like how to manage a team, how to know who to hire in your team, depending on your business, right? Like how to test a product or offer, whatever that is, like how to figure out if what you're offering is viable. And that applies whether it's a service or a physical product or a digital product.
Love it. It's great advice. I love this question. Are you ready for this?
Oh God.
How do you know when a guy in this day and age wants a relationship with you?
Oh my God. Don't start with this. Well, we need to do that in the next episode, because we're almost done.
Okay, let's do a quick one. A quickie. Will the Oracle be back? And will there be any way to buy these past recordings? I really miss our time together. And someone else also asked, will you be doing any Christina the Oracle events this year?
We will be selling the past Oracle of recordings. So we're putting that together now, or Kaylin's putting it together.
I got you guys.
Specifically, Kaylin is putting it together. So we're gonna sell that so people can like buy that and buy those teachings. And the thing is that what came through in that season was like a set of teachings that like everything else comes back to. It's like algebra. It's like you just to solve any algebra problem, like you come back to that. So yeah, we're gonna be selling those, so you can repurchase those, you can rewatch those. If you never got to, you can come back to that, because I feel like so much of what we talk about comes back to those teachings. We don't have any Oracle events planned, but part of that was because kind of what happened is, at the time I was channeling a part of my consciousness that was not in my body, that was connected to my walk-in. And what happened was that part of my consciousness came fully into my body. So I don't have to channel like that to get that same information. That information is what I'm saying. I just say it in a Christina way because now it's embedded in my consciousness. So before, to get that reader, to get that information, I had to go into trance and let that come in, but then it landed in my body. So now I don't need to, which is a lot less energy intensive for me. It's a lot easier for me. But yeah, so I always have access to that, and that's whenever I'm answering things, I'm pulling from her. So, which is me now, I guess. So it's not separate. It's not separate.
So, and we will have a book.
Yeah, and we will have a book.
An oracle book.
Yeah, we will have an oracle book. So get ready for that.
Stay tuned. The world ain't ready.
Yeah, the world is not. I mean, I feel like that. Yeah, I've never been so excited. So it's gonna be good. Yeah, but I'm excited for all of the other opportunities we have, and Oracle isn't gone. Oracle's just transformed.
Oh, I just gotta chill.
Great. Okay, cool. We'll wrap it up there. So great questions everybody sent in. Thank you all if you sent in questions. And we'll put the link in the show notes or description for people to send in more because we want to do a lot more of these Q&As. Hopefully it's helpful. All right, thanks.